Welcome to the Live with Courage podcast, the show that brings you transition tales and other guests that encourage veterans to define success for themselves. With your host, Christina Herr. Welcome to Transition Tales of Live with Courage podcast. I'm your host, Christina Herr. My guest today is Army retiree Benjamin Heimstead. It's great to have you here, Benjamin. Let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Christine. It's great to be here. So I was in the Army 21 years. I was a combat medic. I did 2 deployments. And then after I made it to about 20 years, I decided that I was going to go ahead and drop my retirement and become part of civilian life. I did a lot of things while I was in the military. I was a member of the Audie Murphy Club. I was also inducted into St. Martin and a few other organizations. So I was fairly successful in my time there. And then when it got to the time where I was getting looked at for sergeant major and started hearing people talk about, hey, you're going to have to give 5 years and go to school and everything, I decided that I wasn't willing to kind of make that leap. I always told people that I'd get out of the Army when I stopped having fun. And by all means, I was still having fun when I retired from the military. But there's one thing that I failed to take into account, and that was that I had a family. So I had my daughter and my 2 sons, and my wife, of course. And even though I was having a ball, I was having a blast, riding high. I was a first sergeant having a good time. And all of a sudden, my family wasn't having fun anymore. So at that time, I decided that, hey, time to give the civilian side a chance. And then I began my transition.
So how did your transition look? You're recently transitioned out of the military. When did you start your transition?
So I started my transition really early on for myself. I was always updating my resume, always getting advice from different people on how my resume should look. And then when I started going through transition, I went through SFL-TAP. And I know that SFL-TAP has a lot of good resources, but one of the key things that stood out to me in the Soldier for Life transition was I was sitting in a classroom and there was a facilitator up front who basically, introduced himself as a retired command sergeant major with one of the brigades there on Fort Stewart. And in the course of his teaching, he alluded to the fact that that was the only job that he could find, that he was just waiting for something better. And at that time, I remember that conversation where I kind of just stopped in my mind and was like, this is real. I'm sitting in front of a brigade sergeant major who's having problems finding a job, and I probably need to get busy. I was 6 months out. I had a pretty good resume, so I just started submitting to corporations, not knowing that I probably wouldn't get hired being 6 months out, but I'd at least garner a few interviews to kind of help me out and fine tune my skills. That didn't happen. As good as I thought I was, and as prepared as I thought I was, also holding a bachelor's degree in healthcare administration and an associate's in general studies, and all my experience, the only thing I was hitting was brick walls. And I probably submitted resumes probably to over 250, 300 positions. And the only thing I got was a email from one asking me to do a pre-recorded interview on a basic web platform. And I was scared. I've never been in a position like that where people weren't jumping over themselves, trying to hire me, trying to get me on their team. Hey, this guy's a good soldier, good PT score. He gets stuff done, top block, all that stuff. And now I'm sitting at my house watching my kids play and my wife walk around, and I am totally unequivocally devastated that things are not working out for me. And I am about 3 months out. And being faced with that and I don't want to get into too much of gender stereotypes, but as a male, as somebody grown up where you're supposed to be the provider and everything like that, it was really hitting home. And within the time span of a month, things kind of started turning around. And the first thing that turned around was a former commander of mine who was an infantry commander had wound up in the medical field. And he, out of the blue, gave me a call and said, "Hey, you remember me?" And I said, "Yes, I was a drill sergeant under his command. I was actually a drill sergeant with one of your other podcast members, Matt Wood,
Oh,
who
awesome.
who was also one of my sounding boards and one of the guys who was kind of helping me out and pushing me in the right direction. Always there when I had a question. An outstanding resource is what Matt is, and he's a great friend. Um, so he called me and he said, "Are you getting out?" And I said, "Oh yeah." And he said, "Do you want a job?" I said, I definitely want a job." And everything was supposed to be a slam dunk. I interviewed with him, of course, did great. He was my old commander. It was pretty much a catch up session. I went up to Atlanta to interview with the institution. Uh, Felt really good. Steve felt really good about it. My previous commander went home, hugged my wife, said, "Hey, this is it." And a day later, found out that I wasn't selected. And I was once again devastated. And my buddy was like, "Hey, we're gonna get you on here. I'm gonna send you job postings and everything like that." And I kind of crawled into a shell for about 2 days, like, you know, and then I kind of realized that, that was my chance. Uh, that was my practice run. And I started looking online and I found the company I am with today, which is HCA in Nashville. And I looked at everything they had done as far as accolades. And I said, "You know what? This is my next home. This is where I'm gonna go. I'm going to work here." And I emailed pretty much everybody in their recruiting chain. What I did was I went and applied to about 6 jobs, and I went and sent my resume on top of applying for those 6 jobs. Sent my resume, each job I applied for, and why I thought I was the best guy for it. And I sent that to probably about 10 of the recruiters. And basically I was like, it was kind of a blitzkrieg moment for me. I was shocked. I was like, "Oh, that that worked." At the time, from me signing out on terminal leave, I think I had about 2 months left. So I ended up starting the interview process with HCA. One of the people who wanted to interview me uh, kind of wanted to go in a different path. So I kind of did an interview with them. But clinical education, I interviewed, and this was where kind of Matt was coming in because I think I called him once or twice, was like, "How many interviews do I need to do? What is wrong with these people? Make a decision."
That's one of the biggest complaints that I hear is the amount of interviews people have to go through.
It was amazing. I interviewed with 2 people at first as a group interview, and I felt real good and passed that audition, as it were. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to another guy, and I was like, "Oh, that was the director. I'm good." Next thing I know, I'm talking to 2 more people. And I'm like, what is going on? And then uh, I had to talk to one more person. He was the VP, and I was like, oh God, if I have to sit in front of a president, I'm not gonna do too hot. So I did talk to the VP, and we had a very good conversation. And as we went on, the interviews changed a lot. They were It felt like they were kind of selling me at first on, what the company does and what I do and what the department does. And then very brief stuff with me. One of the things I learned throughout the interview process was take a lot of notes on what they're saying. Research the company, know their vision, their mission, know all that stuff. And then when they ask you, hey, do you have any questions? Make your questions meaningful to something you can do. I remember they were talking about their nursing schematics and how everything was flowing. And when they asked me a question, I said, with a nursing shortage, how do you deal with retention? And they were like, wow, that was a really good question. And we dove into it, and I kept researching the company. If I knew who I was interviewing, I would research them, kind of know what they were all about. And as I kept going and kept doing more questions and knowing everything, uh, it evidently worked out. I think one of their chief concerns was that I didn't know the products that they were using here, which is Microsoft Projects is a big one for project managers, and I didn't have an experience, but I was able to explain how the Army does it, how we use glide paths, how we leverage Excel and PowerPoint and everything like that. And the guy kind of looked at me, was like, oh, you're going to have fun when I introduce you to Microsoft Projects. Oh, really? And he was like, you're doing too much work, man. Now that I have gotten into Microsoft Projects and some of the tools that they have, I'm a firm believer, if I had these tools or had this experience or education in the Army, if the Army would say, hey, we're going to make E6s and E7s project managers, I believe the Army would do dramatically better, because I looked at some of these tools and I was like, man, I would have been a rock star. Um, and since I've sent some of those tools to some of the other people I know, and they're like, man, the Army is pretty far behind, which they're not far behind. I understand there's a lot of security issues, surrounding installing projects and stuff like that. But finally, I got through all my interviews, and I was sitting at work and kind of losing faith. It'd been a week, and people will tell you, hey, a month. And I'm like, man, I've been interviewing for a month. Everybody's, made their call. And then finally, I got a call from the recruiter that I've been, dealing with. And she was upfront with me. She's like, we don't negotiate. Here's your salary. This is the job. Do you accept or not? That was my negotiation. And talking to my dad, I was asking him about negotiating, because he's been successful in the business world. So I was leveraging him as well. And he was like, this is how I negotiate. Yes or no. I want the position or I don't want the position. And tell you the truth, I was not in no position to negotiate. I was about a month out from starting terminal leave, and I was scared. Uh, Scared for my family, scared for me, scared for, among all things, like just basic reputation. I didn't want to be the guy, hey, you remember your first sergeant? Yeah, he's working at Lowe's, which that was my secondary. I was going to go work at Lowe's because I loved Lowe's, and I really wanted to get the camo vest.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with working at Lowe's if that's what you want.
You know what? There's days I stare out my window and go, man, I could be working at Lowe's right now, getting a discount, getting all the remnant wood that's been hurt or destroyed. So I got the job. I accepted the position. I told my wife, I told the kids, hey, we're moving to Nashville, which is where we wanted to settle. We started looking at homes, made offers, put our house on the market. It sold within 24 hours. I mean, everything at that point did a 180. They wanted me up there pretty much 15 days after I started terminal leave. So I wasn't getting pretty much any vacation time. Um, but they were going to allow me to work remote for 2 weeks, which was awesome. They sent me all new stuff from computer setup for a home office, 2 monitors, docking, the whole 9 yards, computer already configured, and I sat down and I began work, and I had a renewed purpose. I had a renewed job in the location I wanted, but getting there was nothing but um, door slamming and no email back and no callbacks and stuff like that, and it's very disheartening. um but when you get to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do a Hail Mary and do this, it ended up working out. And since I've been in this position, I've reached out to a lot of my friends who are getting ready to retire, and it's kind of difficult at this position now. You're trying to help them as much as possible, um, but a lot of them still are in that mentality that you're not going to be an NCO forever. You're not going to be you know in that leadership position forever. You need to get your degree. You need to get some kind of experience. You need to get your Lean Six Sigma, PMP, any programming you want to do, uh, and your degree. That gets you pretty much in the door. And a lot of people with the experience say, well, I got experience. Well, I understand that you do got experience. But when they see your experience as in the military, they're not really counting that as civilian experience. I really had to sell during one of my interviews that I was basically civilian material, talking about emotional intelligence and being a quick learner. I'm enrolled in my PMP. I'm going ahead and doing it. I'm leveraging some of the projects you have here. Let me show you some of the stuff that we do in Excel that does not look much different than yours. And understand that I'm all in this job, and that I want to make you successful and I want to be successful. So I would say never pass up an opportunity to ask the question at the end of an interview of what are your concerns that you have about me?
A lot of people think that service members and veterans are a commodity in the civilian population, and we really aren't. It's a fallacy. It's a myth. And I'm glad you brought that up, that you know there is a bias toward against us with our military mindset, and some of the things that we've learned in the military, that people have this thing about us. They worry about things about us. um but I kind of want to backtrack to something that you said earlier. You said you didn't really want to touch on it, but you said the gender role of you being the breadwinner. And I think that's actually something that's really important to touch on. Not just the gender role of you being a breadwinner, but also the other thing that you talked about of, in the military, we know how to climb the ladder, and we excel that way. So we've got two different things here going on, of the gender role of being the breadwinner as a male, and then also knowing how to excel in the military. So it's kind of a twofer when you're a dude in the military and you're getting out. Like, you know how to excel, but now the roadmap's not there for you anymore. And you're also, you have this perception that you have to excel, you know what I mean, type of thing. So how did you deal with that? Did you just kind of internalize it, or did you reach out and talk to somebody about it?
I internalized a lot of it, but then I leveraged a lot of my friends as well
Okay.
that were military members as well. Uh, you know, those that I trusted and were kind of in my smaller circle, nobody that really worked with me or for me at that time. Because once again, that's a weakness that's not really celebrated in the military. So, you never want to reach out to somebody who works directly with you or knows you currently, that's like, oh man, maybe he wasn't as strong as I thought and all this stuff. Um, so I kind of hid that fact from a lot of the people who were currently around me. And I reached out to Matt, I reached out to Steve, a friend of mine. I reached out to my brothers, who are actually still serving. One's a major, and the other one's a civil affairs staff sergeant. And I was scared. And my wife, bless her heart, and I love my wife with all my heart. In case she watches this, um, she was she was being as supportive as I would allow it. Uh, but I really wasn't letting her in. She knew it was bothering me, but I don't think she really knew the extent of it. And that was kind of really hard for me. And it was a source of a few arguments. Um, but after always being a performer and everything, and then you're going down this road, it is really hard and it can get the best of you really easily. And it wasn't a fact of me turning to my wife and saying, hey, can you get a job, because she's a disabled vet as well. So it's kind of like, I'm the one who's got the ability to go, be a breadwinner. And it was really hard.
Did you know about the resources you had available to you? What is it? Military One Source, Vet Center, a Wounded Warrior Project. They all had like military transition counseling that you could have utilized. Did you know about those resources that you could have had somebody else to talk to outside of your circle?
I did, but I wasn't, me, personally wasn't willing to utilize
I was just
that.
curious.
Yeah, I knew about all of them. I'd endorsed all of them to several soldiers, but when it came down to it, still, I don't know if it was kind of the lack of emotional intelligence at that point, but I was just like, no, that's not me. I'm not the guy who needs to do that. It was real scared, and I had everything at my fingertips to use, and I wasn't using them. And I really can't tell you why I wasn't using them, except for maybe stupid pride. And I'll be upfront and honest about that. Is that you know a lot of the stuff we need to practice what we preach, as far as senior NCOs and senior officers. If we're willing to endorse Military One Source and all these great programs, MFLAG being one of them, we have to partake in them. And I didn't, because and it worked out for me, getting a job and everything. But if I wouldn't have got a job and everything, and stuff would have started to crash and burn, I could not tell you that where I would be.
Right. And that's one of the concerns that I have with military transition, is that a lot of the transition programs, they don't integrate resilience and mental health resources into the programs that people are willing to go to, the ones that talk about the technical aspects of it, and they don't talk about the cultural and mental health and resilience aspects of it. I think if we were to um, combine them, then they would kind of have to sit through them at the same time. You know what I mean? It's like kind of like basic training. You get cultural and you get technicals at the same time. You're stuck listening to values and things like that, even though you really want to go on the range and shoot a gun, but you still got to listen to core values. So I thought, if we would combine them, at least they would have to listen to some of the stuff. So, which I really hope one day that we start to combine some of those things. Um, so what do you think was your biggest challenge going through your transition?
I think the biggest challenge that I had was not allowing myself to be open to the transition. And I said I sat in a lot of these meetings, and I talked to several junior soldiers saying, "Oh, you got this. You can go be a cop or a lineman, or these people are up here, you know, going to bat for you and offering you jobs pretty much like right there." And at some point, um, I was kind of had all my hopes up at that point and everything, that during the probably most critical time of going through SFL-TAP and stuff like that, I wasn't listening. Be honest with you, at that time, I thought, I was the bee's knees. 21 years of healthcare experience, bachelor's degree, associate's degree, Audie Murphy, top blocks on NCOERs, which to this day, being a civilian, nobody's asked to see my NCOERs. A
They
med
don't
staff
care.
can't can't wrap my head around it. They don't even know what it is. Um, and I probably should have been more open to learning about everything that could be done. And I probably missed out on a lot of stuff. Just because at that point I thought, I was the first application I submitted was going to be a bidding war because I was awesome. It didn't go like that.
They were going to fight for you.
Yeah, everybody's gonna fight for me. It was gorgeous. Didn't work. So I think the biggest difficulty was after I didn't listen to all these great things and shut my ears off and kind of put all my eggs in, one or two baskets, that when it came down to it, I really couldn't remember what was out there. What was my emergency fallback plan? And in one day SFL-TAP, they gave me 30. I didn't remember, not one of them. And that's, my bad. So I think my my biggest problem was just getting over myself. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. I love the way you put it. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, just getting over myself and realizing that uh, I I don't have, everything. I'm not the poster boy for, you know, being a civilian. Uh, and if I could have gotten over myself very early on in this transition, I probably would have had a lot better luck. But I probably would have ended up somewhere I'm not as happy as being part of the team here. If you can, they take care of veterans really well. I mean, I get my little veteran
Oh,
tag.
that's so cool.
There's a lot of vets here. We have a group on our local dashboard where we can all meet. There's about 700 members. If one of us is having a hard time, we can reach out one to one. Um, and the veterans presence in this organization is huge. And we make a difference, and this organization makes a difference in a lot of things. Today, after lunch, we're going to do some Make-A-Wish Foundation fundraising that's on company time. We're allowed to give to specific charity, or any charity we want, with a company match. So I mean, I got over myself a little too late, but I still landed in what I call is probably one of the best companies I could have been chosen or selected to work for.
Oh yeah, everybody's journey has a purpose. So
Yep.
so what would be your advice then for those that are about to transition out of the military?
Put everything you think to the back of your head. Be open. If you don't have a degree, go get a degree. It may be just, and I've heard it numerous times, it's a useless piece of paper. I have experience. You do have experience. Nobody's going to take that away from you. Nobody's going to take away the countless hours you spent, doing inventories or ordering or fixing mess ups or going to bat for soldiers. Nobody is going to question that. But you need to have your experience leveled against a set standard, which is a certification or a degree. Um, a lot of people have experience. I wouldn't be where I am without a degree. You can go on to any site and you'll see bachelor's degree preferred, required. Well, it's preferred. I got experience. Yeah, but the guy with the bachelor's degree that just applied over you is going to get the job. So get over yourself. Go get your degree. O2O from Syracuse University has a lot of resources. They'll pay for you to get your PMP, your project management professional. They'll pay for your Six Sigma or your Lean Six Sigma. They'll pay for all that stuff. If you are about 3 years out and you are not writing a resume, finding people in the field that you want, there's nothing that says if you want to be a hospital administrator, you can't call the local hospital and meet with one of the administrators and ask the simple question, if I was applying for a job like this tomorrow, what would I need? They'll tell you, and you just have to go get it. I will tell you, PM project management is just like being an operations guy in S3, only your projects are not coming at the pace of 1 per hour. And you don't have a sergeant major and a colonel yelling at you, and it's very much lower key, which, I think it all boils down to get over yourself, ask for help, get what you need to get, do what you need to do, and stop being a stop sign. When people say, hey, why don't you have a degree? Don't defend your answer not to get an degree. Go work on it. There's a reason they're asking you why you don't have your degree. It's because you probably need it. Unless you want to do something that, is a little less.
I mean, if you want to be an electrician, you can go get your certification and be an electrician.
Oh yeah, they were talking in transition. They would have given me a toolbox and taught me how to be an independent contractor. And then gave me another set of tools after. Don't think that didn't pique my interest. I love tools. You're gonna give me free stuff, I'm all in.
You sound like my daughter who's using Voc Rehab right now. They gave her a laptop and a printer and
oh yeah. I mean, there's tons of stuff you can do, but I think that's the biggest thing is just get over yourself. If you need help, ask for help. If you need somebody to look at something, let them look at it. I'm trying to help as many vets as I can. And a lot of times I turn into the a-hole because I'm like, where's your degree? I have experience. You can, you might want to rethink that. Get a degree.
It all depends on what you're trying to get. And I think you made a really key point there is find out what you want to do and then go ask somebody that's doing it and say, what do I need? Because I mean, if you don't need the degree, don't waste your time doing it. But if you need that degree, go get that degree. Like I want to do research, so I need a doctorate to do research at the level that I want to do research. I mean, I can go do research, but if I want to get published and I want to be taken seriously in the scholarly arena, I have to have a doctorate. So you've got to figure out what you want to do and figure out how to get there.
Do a roadmap.
Yeah, I think that is great advice. Wow. This has been a really great podcast episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and share all this great information. Do you have any final words for the audience?
I guess one of the final words, and I tell everybody about this, the one of the best things I like about being a civilian. And that is, if a meeting is an hour long on your calendar, it's an hour long in real life. I've sat in so many meetings that are an hour long. The first meeting I sat in here is somebody came on about 10 minutes before the meeting was slated to end and said, "Hey, we're 10 minutes out of our hard stop." And I kind of looked around and I don't know what that means. And then right when it hit, the meeting was over, the voice came back on and said, "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a pleasure to have you at this meeting. We've reached our hard stop. If you need to know anything else, please leverage email or face-to-face." And the meeting ended. And I was, people had to talk about stuff. And somebody was like, "Hey, we care about people's time here." I think that's the best thing about being a civilian. The worst thing about being a civilian is trying to pick out your clothes every day.
Yes, I agree.
Which I leveraged my wife. My wife had to take me shopping. Big fan of 511, but also a big fan of Hager slacks now. Never thought that would happen.
Great job leveraging your resource of your spouse.
Yeah, she had to take me shopping because I went shopping and spent about $300 and showed her everything I got. She told me to take it back. She took me shopping, and she's the one who tells me, "Hey, that matches," and "Hey, brown belts don't go with black shoes," and "Hey, you need to wear a shirt under that." So it's great having a significant other since retirement. I mean, my kids are a lot happier. I'm a lot happier. I have 5 acres now, a John Deere tractor. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Your transition and how you handle your transition and how receptive you are to your transition is definitely going to drive your ultimate success or failure.